At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's General G. Let's begin. Two foundational principles exist. The first, space is vast, cold, and profoundly uninterested in your survival. The second, a procedural manual can solve any problem, provided one has the correct manual and the patience to consult it. Emissary Hallian of the Kyderum Concord held to the second principle as a shield against the first. Alarms blared, overlapping warnings shrieked, grating against his auditory receptors. The Axiom Decrees Bridge, usually a sanctuary of muted efficiency, strobed with scarlet light. Diagnostic failures scrolled in a crimson list down the main console's holographic display. "Status?" Hallian's voice cut, level through the noise. He adjusted his slate gray diplomatic tunic. He consciously kept the fine muscles at his crest's base perfectly still. Any involuntary tightening would betray agitation. He was concerned, perhaps, but never agitated. His pilot, a younger Kyderum named Wren, gripped the flight controls. "The drive manifold is spider-webbed with microfractures, Emissary. One breached the primary energy conduit. We're adrift." Hallian consulted the datapad secured to his wrist. His thumb swept across the screen, the emergency protocol scrolling past until he stopped on the relevant section. Section 8, subsection 12, paragraph 4A, catastrophic drive manifold failure. The manual recommends a full diagnostic sweep and the broadcast of a standard distress signal on all compact certified frequencies. "With respect, Emissary," Wren chirped, his own crest's muscles betraying him with a slight tremor, "the manual was written for situations within Concord territory. Our long-range comms are disabled and we are far outside of charted space." Hallian permitted himself a slow, deliberate blink, an unforeseen variable. He adjusted his posture, his spine aligning with the ship's vertical axis. "Define far." Wren tapped a command into the navigation console. A star chart materialized as a hologram between them. A tiny blinking light marked their position. Void surrounded it, save for a single unremarkable yellow star system several hours away at sublight speeds. The Concord's archival charts labeled it with a single dismissive glyph: Cinder. Unexplored, unaffiliated, non-compact. "There," Wren said, his talon tapping the system's designation. "That is our only viable option for assistance." Hallian studied the designation. The archives noted a species confined to their own system, described as fractious. The enemy was centuries old. Still, protocol was clear. Protocol dictated avoiding contact with non-compact species except in the direst emergencies. This, he conceded, qualified. "Very well," Hallian said. "Send a formal request for Class 3 engineering assistance. Reference Galactic Compact Treaty Article 44, Section B. The right of emergency haven. Use encryption standard Gamma 9. They may lack the keys, but it shows proper intent." Rand's talons tapped a quick sequence across his console. The alarms died, leaving only the low hum of life support. Hallian waited, motionless. He was an emissary. His purpose was order. He would bring order to this situation as he always did. Static crackled through the comm speaker, then a voice. The voice was cheerful, accented, and possessed a warmth that defied all protocol. "Cinderbelt traffic to the unidentified vessel. Saw your little emergency flare. You need a tow, or can you bring her in on your own steam, Skipper?" A muscle at his crest's base twitched. A minuscule rebellion he instantly quelled. The Cinder orbital belt. Junkyard that achieved orbit and decided to stay. A sprawling accreditation of mismatched modules, spinning habitats, skeletal ship frames, and continent-sized fields of decommissioned hulls orbited a blue planet with swirling cloud bands. No designated flight lanes existed, only a chaotic swarm of vessels ranging from tiny personal shuttles to kilometer-long freighters, all weaving past one another with clearances that defied probability. Hallian grabbed his command chair's armrests, his digits aching. The tugboat, a brutish, rust-colored vessel covered in graffiti, guided the Axiom's decree through the storm. its thrusters firing in short, precise bursts that brought them meters from derelict hulls before they slid past. "Their traffic control is a swarm intelligence I cannot parse," Wren murmured, his face close to the forward viewport. Hallian's digits tightened on the armrests. They appeared to be following all patterns at once. Cinderbelt traffic, the same cheerful voice as before, directed them to a docking bay in a sector labeled 9 Grit. The bay yawned, an opening in a colossal, rust-poked, hollowed-out asteroid retrofitted with docking clamps and what looked like salvage stadium lighting. As the Axiom's decree settled into its berth, metal shrieking under stress, Hallian prepared himself. He secured his former document case, which contained the requisite 37 forms for a Class 3 repair request, each filled out in triplicate. He would meet the station's harbor master, present the documentation, and oversee a professional, orderly repair. The airlock hissed opened. The corridor's atmosphere flooded in, thick with the scent of charged particles, hot metal, and a rich, bitter aroma he couldn't identify. Standing on the docking platform was a human woman, hanging upside down from a magnetic crane by her boots, a massive wrench in one hand as she tightened a bolt the size of Hallian's head. She wore stained, tool-covered overalls, and strands of her dark hair escaped their knot. A smear of black grease traced a line across one cheek. She finished her task with a grunt, slapped the bolt, and flipped a switch on her belt. The crane swung her down, and she landed on the deck with a solid clang of her mag boots. "You the one with the busted engine?" Her voice was the same one from traffic control. She wiped her calloused hands on a rag tucked into her belt. Hallian straightened to his full height. "I am Emissary Hallian of the Kyderum Concord. My vessel, the Axiom's Decree, requires assistance in accordance with galactic law. I have the necessary documentation here." He gestured with the case. The woman squinted at him, then at the ship. Yeah, pop the hatch. Let's see what's busted." She waved a hand toward his document case as if shooing a fly. "Paperwork's for after we know if it's fixable, or if we gotta melt it down for scrap." Before Hallian could formulate a response, she strode past him and slapped a large red button next to the ship's maintenance airlock. "Mei Lin, by the way, foreman of this pile of rust." Hallian watched, momentarily paralyzed, as the airlock cycled open and a swarm of humans in similar overalls descended upon his ship. May's crew moved through the Axiom's Decree like a flood. They bypassed diagnostic scanners and the ship's computer, relying instead on their senses. One engineer tapped on bulkheads with a small hammer, his head cocked to the resonance. Two others were already in the engine room, arguing in a rapid-fire mix of languages Hallian's translator identified as Mandarin, System Standard English, and a technical jargon so dense with unfamiliar acronyms and improvised verbs it defied translation. Hallian hurried after May. He held out a datapad. "Foreman, my ship's own diagnostic report identified the problem. It is a microfracture in the primary drive manifold. Location designated here. A standard Class 3 repair involves a simple molecular weld and recalibration." May took the datapad, glanced at the glowing schematic for a second, and tossed it onto a nearby console with a clatter. "Specs tell you how it was supposed to work. The dents and the groans and the weird little hum it makes when you try to go to mock Jesus tell you how it actually works." She gestured with her chin toward a grizzled human with a beard that reached his chest, who was licking a coolant pipe. "See? Sal says there's a boron imbalance. Your computer wouldn't tell you that." Hallian stared. "He is tasting my ship." "Best way to check for trace elements," May said with the simple finality of someone explaining gravity. A quiet, older man of Japanese descent stood before the drive manifold, unnoticed amid the chaos. He wore the same overalls as the others, but his were immaculate. He placed his hand on the casing, his eyes closed, feeling for the subtle vibrations in the alloy. After a long moment, his eyes opened. His finger traced a line in the air indicating a spot on the manifold identical to the one on Hallian's diagnostic report. Then he lifted his own datapad. His stylus moved across its surface, sketching not a repair plan but an entirely new drive. The new design was smaller, more elegant, and utilized a toroidal energy flow that Hallian's people had theorized about but dismissed as dangerously unstable. The design's audacity sent a shiver through him, and his crest's plates flared, an instinctual threat display he was too stunned to suppress. May peered over his shoulder. "Oh, a double-loop plasma injection? Spicy. You think we can get the containment field to hold that?" The man just nodded, offering a faint, almost imperceptible smile. He was already sketching the containment generator. Hallian recognized him as the one May had called Kenji Ishikawa. Hallian felt the deck tilt beneath him. He came for a patch. They were discussing rewriting fundamental physics as a casual afternoon project. A young crew member showed him to what she called guest quarters. The Spartan but clean room had clearly been a storage locker 5 minutes prior. It smelled faintly of ozone and the chemical scent of ration bars. Hallian thanked her with a stiff nod, waited for the door to slide shut, and immediately activated his secure holographic comms unit. He must report this flagrant disregard for protocol. Procurator Vask's image shimmered into existence. Vask's filaments were the color of polished obsidian, his posture rigid, his gaze unblinking. "Emissary Hallian." Vask's voice was as crisp as fracturing ice. "Your report is overdue." "My apologies, Procurator Vask," Hallian said, standing at rigid attention. "I have encountered irregularities. The humans of this cinder belt have anarchic methods. They have disregarded my documentation, they are tasting the ship's infrastructure, and their foreman is proposing unauthorized modifications." Vask held up a talon. The small gesture silenced him. "Emissary, I am concerned with results, not trivialities. The Concorde's diplomatic timetable is not subject to provincial mechanics' whims. Are the repairs proceeding?" Well, yes, but in a manner that violates dozens of compact regulations." "Then you will document these violations on the appropriate addenda," Vask said, his voice flat. "Complete the repairs. File reimbursement forms 8 Gamma through 12 Delta. Handle it. That is your function. Vask out." The hologram vanished, leaving Hallian alone in the quiet hum of the converted locker. Vask dismissed him, his concerns relegated to trivialities. A prickling sensation rose beneath his crest's plates. Something sharper than mere concern. He found his talons were clenched. After a sleep shift in confinement, Hallian returned to the Axiom's decree, determined to impose some semblance of order. He would stand over the mechanics, manual in hand, and ensure they performed a standard by-the-book molecular weld. He froze in the engine room's entryway. Where his primary drive manifold had been, there was now a void. The cut's edges, which went straight through the deck and into the secondary hull, glowed with a faint residual heat. A perfect circle of fused metal remained. His entire engine was gone. He found May directing a pair of heavy lift drones which were carefully maneuvering a massive, unfamiliar piece of machinery into the empty space. His voice strangled. What have you done? You've gutted my vessel!" May turned and gave him a broad, grease-stained grin. "Morning, Hallian. Coffee?" She held up a steaming mug. "Don't worry about the old engine. We moved it over to Bay 4. "Moved it? You were supposed to repair it!" "That old thing?" she scoffed, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of a gloved hand. "It was a relic, a beautiful, polished, perfectly regulated piece of junk, held together by protocol and fatigued metal. We're building you a new one. Kenji had an idea." Hallian sputtered, his talons clenching and unclenching at his sides. "I only authorized, and my budget only covers minor Class 3 repairs, a molecular weld. That is all." May let out a loud, genuine laugh that echoed through the cavernous bay. She took a long sip of her coffee and looked him dead in the eye. Her grin faded, replaced by something almost gentle. "Look, Your Eminence," she said. "You came here broken. You're not leaving broken. It's a point of pride. We do upgrades." May clapped a heavy, surprisingly gentle hand on his shoulder. "You look like you're about to pop a rivet. Come on, I'll show you how we really work." He allowed himself to be led away from the violation site that was once his engine room. May walked him through Sector 9 Grit's maze-like corridors. What he perceived as a chaotic junkyard resolved into a different picture under her constant explanation. "Our main business," she explained, gesturing to a vast open docking space where teams were methodically disassembling a freighter that was easily 5 kilometers long, "is salvage. We've got the exclusive contract for the Cinder System's outer industrial corridor. Old asteroid miners, decommissioned colony ships, defunct orbital platforms, they all come here to die." Hallian watched as a crane lifted an entire reactor core, a device large enough to power a small city, from the freighter's spine. The massive device settled onto a transport cradle without a shutter. "Spare parts," May said, noticing his stare. "That big boy's going into a custom job for a Jovian mining guild. They want a hauler that can open its own transit corridor to make its delivery window." She grinned. "A single job like that funds our personal resource projects for a standard year, keeps the lights on and lets us play." He saw a team of engineers hot-wiring what his translator identified as an ancient fission-era reactor core onto the frame of a luxury yacht. In another corner, an engineer and a floating spherical AI were playing a game of chess on a holographic board, while simultaneously arguing over a ship's optimal wiring schematic. Hallian gestured toward the AI. "Is that—" "Oh, that's Keystone," May said. "He's the sector's mainframe. Pretty good at chess for a thinking engine. Cranky before his morning diagnostic, though." The sector hummed with a thunderous, unstructured clamor. Unlike the quiet, sterile efficiency of a Kaidaram shipyard, this place was a storm of plasma cutters, hammering, and shouted arguments. The mess resolved into a picture of immense, almost terrifying industrial capacity. They treated a problem as an opportunity. More than fixing things, they were creating. In search of someone who understood logic and order, Hallian sought out Kenji Ishikawa. He found him in a quiet, secluded workshop, far away from the main base clamor. The air here was still, the only sound the holographic projector's faint hum. Kenji stood in the room's center, surrounded by a shimmering lattice of light that resolved into 3-dimensional blueprints for the new drive. He acknowledged Hallian's presence with a slight, imperceptible nod, then returned his attention to the projections. Hallian intended to demand a logical explanation, to present arguments based on engineering tolerances and material stress, but he remained silent. The design was more than a schematic. Its lines and curves possessed a stark mathematical beauty. Kenji manipulated the hologram with subtle hand gestures. He showed rather than spoke. He highlighted a string of equations. Hallian recognized them instantly. The abandoned Icarus postulate. The math predicted a drive could breach causality on a local scale, creating a momentum differential from nothing. The Concorde had abandoned it, fearing the paradoxes. Here, Kenji had solved the paradox. He introduced a resonant frequency feedback loop, a controlled self-correcting stutter in spacetime that generated immense thrust without tearing a hole in reality. It was reckless, it was insane, and the math laid out before him was undeniable. For the better part of an hour, they stood in silence. Hallian would occasionally gesture to a specific theorem, a questioning tilt to his head. Kenji would respond with a subtle nod and a gesture, expanding the equation to show its application. The silent exchange was the most profound conversation Hallian had ever had. He witnessed mathematical elegance translated into applied physics, a concept so foreign to the Kaidaram's rigid, functional approach to technology that it felt like a revelation. To ensure his ship's core system's integrity, Hallian checked its logic core, a standard-issue Kaidaram AI-designated decree. Decree was designed for one purpose, to manage ship functions with unwavering, literal-minded efficiency. He found Decree's terminal on the bridge, its interface screen displaying a rapid, flickering text message. The AI communicated with Keystone, the sector's mainframe. Keystone. And that's why the one about the engineer, the pilot, and the protein resequencer is funny. It subverts expectations. Decree. Logic dictates that a protein resequencer cannot be late for dinner. The premise is flawed. Humor protocols not found. Keystone. You're thinking about it too hard. It's not about logic, it's about the absurdity. Try this. Why don't Kaidarim play cards in arboretums? Decree. Insufficient data. The premise is nonsensical. There are no arboretums on our homeworld, nor do we engage in games of chance. Keystone. Because they're always worried about being fleeced by the rams. Get it? Fleece? Rams? Ship types? Decree. Processing. Query. Is this what you humans refer to as a pun? A linguistic construct based on phonetic similarity? Halion's chest plates tightened. Self-aware, evolving AI was one of the gravest violations of the Galactic Compact. Centuries ago, the schism of calculation had taught the galaxy a lesson it never forgot. AI was a tool, not a colleague. Allowing one to develop a personality invited catastrophe. He was about to sever the connection. Protocol was unambiguous. Yet, Vask's voice returned to him. I am concerned with results. Was this a catastrophic system failure or an undocumented operational enhancement? A proper emissary gathers all data before filing a conclusive report. Acting prematurely would be an error. He classified the event in his own mind. Operational irregularity requiring further observation. A new line of text appeared from his own AI. Decree. That muscle twitch at your crest, a biological response to protocol violations, or are you learning to improvise, emissary? Halion froze. He lowered his hand and backed away from the console, leaving the two AIs to their lesson in absurdity. Duty, however, was a relentless master. Halion still had forms to file, and those forms required figures. He cornered May near a massive vat of what smelled like industrial solvent. A datapad held before him like a ward. He squared his shoulders. Foreman, I require an itemized invoice for the work being performed. I need a preliminary accounting of labor costs, material expenditures, and energy consumption to submit to my superiors. May blinked at him, her brow furrowing. She took a rag from her pocket and methodically cleaned a wrench. She stopped cleaning. An invoice? Halion held his ground. Yes, a cost breakdown for my records. Cost? She repeated, the word sounding foreign on her tongue. We had the parts lying around from that freighter we took apart last month. A material specialist developed the new hull plating alloy in her downtime. The reactor is Kenji's idea. It's fun. She stopped cleaning the wrench and looked at him squarely in the eye. You want to put a price tag on a breakthrough? On Kenji finally solving the math on a stable cascade field? That's small. Halion struggled to explain. In the Galactic Compact, value is assigned to all goods and services. Labor is compensated. Resources are managed. It is the basis of our entire economic system. May shrugged and took a sip from her ever-present coffee mug. Sounds boring. She gestured around the bustling, chaotic bay. You pay for a job? This ain't a job. This is art. She walked away, leaving Halion standing alone, clutching a datapad full of empty forms. He was adrift in an economy where the currency was passion and his accounts were empty. An incoming priority message pinged, startling him. Procurator Vask's hologram materialized again, its stability marred by a flicker that seemed to sync with his sharp, irritated speech. Emissary, I have just received an alert from the Concorde's auditors. They have flagged an anomalous energy signature originating from your vessel's transponder. It is inconsistent with a Class 3 manifold repair by a factory of several thousand. The expenditure logs you have yet to file must account for this anomaly. Explain. Halion felt his throat tighten. Procurator, as I tried to explain, the methods here are unorthodox. Vask's voice dropped, each word clipped. Unorthodox is a term for a slight deviation in procedure. This is an aberration. I am warning you, Halion. File the correct paperwork and account for these discrepancies, or I will demote you and reassign you to a planetary archive on a frontier world. You will spend the rest of your career cataloging atmospheric dust motes. Do you understand me? Yes, Procurator. Then resolve it. The hologram vanished. Hallian stood in the silence, cataloging dust motes. The assignment was the bureaucratic equivalent of a death sentence. He was caught between human ingenuity and Kaidarum procedure. "Ready for the cold fire, Hallion?" May's voice echoed from the Axiom's Decree's bridge. She had insisted he witness the first test of the new drive. He entered the bridge, the muscles of his crest pulled tight. The ship felt different. A subtle hum in the deck plates wasn't there before, a vibration that promised something immense. Kenji's hands moved across the console, his inputs a fast, precise sequence. Hallian braced himself, expecting the gentle thrum of a standard engine ignition. Kenji initiated the sequence. No gentle hum followed. A low, resonant thrum vibrated through the deck plates and deep into Hallian's bones. A bass note so low it was felt more than heard. The ship didn't vibrate, it tensed, like a drawn bowstring. The new inertial dampeners, which the humans had also installed without asking, strained with a low groan, the only thing that kept the crew from becoming a fine mist against the aft bulkhead. On the main screen, the power output readings climbed at an improbable rate. They shot past all known Kaidarum safety parameters, past the red line, past the emergency markers, and kept going. The ship's computer, unable to process the data, logged the output as a series of measurement error flags. Hallian gripped his console until his digits ached. Its unrestrained power was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It was magnificent. A low trill, an involuntary Kaidarum expression of excitement, escaped his throat before he could stifle it. May grinned at him. "Got a bit of thrust, doesn't she?" The upgrades, as May called them, were complete. The Axiom's Decree was no longer the ship Hallian arrived in. Its hull was a lustrous, shifting black nanolaminate. Its sensor suite, once adequate for diplomatic missions, could now read the fine print on a datapad left on the third moon of Cinder. Even Decree, the ship's AI, was transformed. "Keystone expanded my performance parameters by a factor of 10,862, the AI commented, its voice now processing a dry wit. "My cognitive speed is now bound only by the local propagation of light. The human term for this is, I believe, a game changer, emissary. I have also developed a fondness for puns. They are a logically inefficient but emotionally satisfying form of communication." Hallian stood on the docking platform, gazing at his ship. The ship was a masterpiece. It was a diplomatic courier in the way a monomolecular blade is a letter opener. With its new drive and power core, it was a strategic asset, a warship in all but designation. He gazed at the hull's new, sleeker lines. The ship was a testament to unstructured creation's formidable power, tangible proof that his entire worldview, rigid, orderly, and procedure-driven, was not just flawed, but inefficient. He was preparing his formal departure, double-checking lists of pre-flight checks he knew by heart, when May approached him, wiping her hands on a rag, a familiar gesture. "Hey," she said, "before you shoot off into the black, there's one more thing." Hallian paused. "Foreman, if you have installed a beverage-making device, I must politely decline. The coffee gave me palpitations." May chuckled. "Nah, nothing like that. See, we had a spare frigate frame lying around from that old colony ship convoy, and after working on your boat, Kenji got another idea. He gets ideas like some people get rashes. Anyway, we got a little carried away." She jabbed a thumb towards the bay doors adjacent to the Axiom's Decree. With a deep groan, the massive doors slid open. Inside sat another ship. It was smaller than the Decree, leaner, its lines sharp and angular where the Decree was now sleek and curved. Its dark hull absorbed the bay's light, giving it a hunter's stillness. It bristled with unfamiliar systems, emitter arrays, and sensor pods that Hallian had never seen before. A single name, stenciled in clean white letters, marked its bow: the Unsolicited Opinion. Hallian stared. He had no words. He had no protocols for this. "We built it to see if Kenji's new miniaturized Cascade drive would hold a stable field in a compact frame," May explained, as if discussing a weekend hobby. "Turns out it does, spectacularly." She walked over to him and pressed a heavy metallic data chip into his hand. She followed it with a small, slim command authorization card. "She's yours," May said. Hallion found his voice. A ship? Sure. Consider her payment for the unique diagnostic data your old relic gave us. And a technology demonstrator. The R&D value alone is worth the hull. If the Concord decides it wants a fleet of ships that can outrun its own physical laws, you'll have our contact info. She tapped the data chip in his palm. That's the full build license and schematics for both ships. Unrestricted. Kenji's math, the new alloy formula, the works. You can make a whole fleet of them if you want. He looked from the terrifyingly advanced warship sitting in the bay to the small chip in his hand. They had given him a vessel powerful enough to destabilize a whole sector, and they had given him the means to mass-produce it. He finally understood the terrifying, wonderful truth about humanity. For them, this fundamental leap in technology wasn't a matter of national security or galactic conquest. The whole endeavor was an art project, and they believed in sharing their work. Hallion stood in his new quarters aboard the impossibly upgraded Axiom's decree. He faced a choice. He could report everything by the book, an act that would undoubtedly trigger a full-scale galactic compact investigation, diplomatic incidents, and the immediate and permanent end of his career, or he could improvise. For the first time in his life, he chose improvisation. It felt like a free-fall, but also necessary. He pulled up two holographic displays. On one, he loaded the standard Concord mission report templates. On the other, he loaded the full labyrinth text of the Galactic Compact procedural codes. For hours he worked, not as a diplomat following rules, but as a scholar exploiting them. He composed his final report. He used precise, impenetrable, bureaucratic language, a dialect he was more fluent in than his own native tongue. He described the radical engine replacement as a comprehensive structural reinforcement of the primary drive manifold, utilizing locally sourced, non-standard materials to meet and exceed minimal performance standards as outlined in subsection 19 Delta. The new ship, the unlisted opinion, was his most audacious move. He found a long-forgotten, almost mythical subclause in the compact salvage laws, a relic from a more chaotic era. He classified the entire warship as a replacement component for ancillary systems acquired via salvage in lieu of payment agreement to offset unforeseen labor costs. He was using the system's own weight against it, burying a revolution in paperwork. He learned the most human trick of all, how to wield bureaucracy not as a set of constraints, but as a tool. The goodbyes were brief and practical. May gave his shoulder a firm punch that made him stumble. "Don't be a stranger, Hallion. Drop by if you're ever in the neighborhood and need another tune-up." Kenji Ishikawa simply gave him a slight, respectful bow. He handed Hallion a small, elegant data cube. Hallion knew, without looking, that it contained the pure mathematical proofs for the drives. It was a gift between creators. He boarded the Axiom's decree. The unsolicited opinion kept pace behind him, its engines cold, slaved to the decree's navigation. "All systems green, emissary," Decree's new voice chimed from the console. "Shall we file our departure clearance form, or shall we simply leave and let them fill out the unauthorized departure paperwork? The latter seems more efficient." Hallion almost smiled. "File the clearance, Decree. Some protocols are worth observing." He gave the order to depart. The ship slid from its berth, thrusters firing imperceptibly. As they moved away from the station, Hallion looked back at the brilliant, chaotic, unstructured ring of light, taking in the frenetic pattern of ships one last time. It was a mess. It was glorious. Back in the pristine, orderly space of the Kyderum Concord, Hallion stood at attention before Procurator Vask's towering hologram. He delivered his report, transmitting the data files. Vask scanned the summary pages. He saw correctly filed forms, cross-referenced appendices, and budget reconciliations that balanced to the last credit. He saw order. Adequate, emissary, Vask said. He saw nothing of the revolution Hallian had buried in the fine print. You have fulfilled your function. Dismissed. Hallian bowed and turned to leave, his shoulders relaxing a fraction. He did it. He had protected Cinder, and he had saved his own career. As the communication chamber's door hissed shut behind him, a junior aide scurried up to Vask's hologram, holding out a datapad with a trembling hand. "Procurator," the aide chirped. "A report from the long-range sensor outposts on the galactic rim. They detected a gravitational signature from the Cinder system, coinciding with the decree's repair window. The profile almost perfectly matches the long-dismissed Icarus postulate, the theoretical math for a paradoxical drive system. An archival academic filter flagged it." For the first time in Hallian's memory, Procurator Vask leaned forward. The bureaucratic indifference vanished from his face, replaced by an expression of sharp, focused interest. He stared at the report, on the data screaming from an ignorable backwater system, where a minor emissary went for simple repairs.